Welcome to Bleacher Report's NFL Daily. I'm Mitch, and I'm here because many of you are wondering one thing. Mitch, what do we have to do? What could we possibly do to defeat the Kansas City Chiefs? What does an NFL team actually have to do? Do we have to resort to paying the refs? Like, what does this have to become? So in this live stream, I'm going to discuss just that. I'm going to take a look at the teams that have gone up against the Kansas City Chiefs and have fallen short. I'm going to discuss the foes, the enemies, the rivals, the contenders against Kansas City and what they have to do to defeat the Chiefs next season. We're not going to be talking about the Eagles. The Eagles have an opportunity to get revenge from a Super Bowl just 2 seasons ago. I wish them luck. Luckily for them, they do have Saquon Barkley. And if there's anybody this season that can take down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, it might be Saquon. So good luck, Saquon. We're all rooting for you, bro. Except for Chiefs Kingdom. Yesterday, watching the Bills game, I really thought it was the day. I really thought it was the time. I really thought it was the team to knock down the Chiefs. But unfortunately, it was not. So let's get to the list of teams that I think have a chance to beat them, but the things that they have to do this offseason to improve and become a team that can knock off Kansas City. Let's start it off with the team that's done it before. That is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals and Joe Burrow have the offense to be able to beat the Chiefs. We know this. They have the Triple Crown Jamar Chase. They have Joe Burrow himself, who has been to a Super Bowl and did it by defeating the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. But this season, the Bengals had a big flaw. You might know it as defense. Yeah, the Bengals don't know what that is. So it's actually when you stop your opponent from scoring points. I know Cincinnati, it's hard to understand. But this offseason, Cincinnati must find a defense to complement their offense. There's things offensively that they can do to improve and help themselves out, like re-signing T. Higgins. Re-signing T. Higgins is essential to keep that offense at its most potent, to have 2 elite wide receiver 1 caliber players, Chase and Higgins. That is impossible for any team to defend. No matter who they have at defensive coordinator, Spagnuolo, no matter who's rushing the passer or who's covering, a lot of teams simply don't have corners that can go up against those 2 guys. Another helpful thing would be by re-signing Mike Gesicki, a dangerous tight end. The Chiefs, one of their biggest weaknesses was the tight end position this season. They're actually like the worst team against tight ends this year, right? And unfortunately, Dalton Kincaid could not catch that ball, but Mike Gesicki was a really nice complement to this offense, especially actually when T. Higgins was not playing in the lineup. He stepped up big time. He was a big-time third down converter. So Mike Gesicki would be another nice compliment. I think they could get him pretty cheap to come back. So Higgins and Gesicki and maintaining that entire weapon core for Joe Burrow for another season would be huge. Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, those guys included, okay? Another thing that they can do offensively to help improve and help out Joe Burrow is just by upgrading that interior offensive line, by getting a little bit more protection on the inside, specifically when you're talking about defending or blocking the Chiefs, because Chris Jones is the guy that you have to defend. He's the guy that you have to block, right? So solidifying the O-line. And I think they should be looking at veteran offensive linemen to come in here, like maybe if Zach Martin wants to play 1 season for a contender like the Bengals, Zach Martin would be really interesting. Brandon Scherf is another one of those guys. Kevin Zeitler is another one of those guys. Guys that have been proven in the NFL, good players that you could plug in right away in pretty much any system and they would have success. Some lower key names are like Tevin Jenkins from the Bears, Will Hernandez from the Cardinals. These guys have played well the last couple of seasons. James Daniels is another veteran. Don't think he's quite the scheme fit, but he's another guy to look at in free agency. Now, when it comes to the defense, they have many holes, but I think the biggest thing they could do to change their defense is by adding a pass rusher that can complement Trey Hendrickson. Somebody like Khalil Mack, who we discussed in a previous video. Somebody like Josh Sweat from the Eagles, who can make an impact off the edge. Or maybe even a defensive tackle like Adigi Zua from the Cowboys, Milton Williams from the Eagles, DJ Jones if they want to go big and nasty at nose tackle to help replace somebody like DJ Reader. They didn't have that direct replacement for DJ Reader this season, and that definitely hurt them on early downs against the run, but their run defense was the furthest from the concern. Their pass defense was far worse, in my opinion. They switched their defensive coordinator, so they've already made that change. I'm not sure exactly if they're going to be the same sort of defense or not, but I do think it will be more about the playing fast, fundamental football and less about the confusion of the scheme and the coverages. And I think that could allow the secondary to develop. Guys like Dax Hill, who was a first-round pick out of Michigan. DJ Turner, another Michigan product in the second round in recent years. DJ Turner was actually playing really well this year before he went down. Dax Hill is somebody that they haven't quite figured out a fit for, but those two guys could develop in this new defense. So I'm intrigued whether it's at corner or safety where these guys could shine. And then drafting a defensive playmaker would definitely be helpful at number 17, whether it be a linebacker, a safety, or a defensive lineman. Any of those could help this defense. I mean, even a corner, right? And they could definitely use a corner number 1. There's not many of those just flying around unless they make a trade for somebody like Sauce Gardner, who did go to Cincinnati at the college level. You know, if they made a trade like that, that would be a huge difference maker. But if they were to sign somebody, you know, there's established veterans like Charvarius Ward, who used to play for the Chiefs, DJ Reed from the Jets, Carlton Davis, who played well for the Lions this year, Asante Samuel from the Chargers. There's plenty of options just to even get an upgrade at that position because they felt far too slow. Their inability to play man coverage was definitely prominent. Guys like Mike Hilton, I think, will probably be gone as they're getting a little too old at the nickel spot and really killing them in coverage. And on the perimeter, Cam Taylor-Britt really regressed this year. So there's a lot of areas where they could very much improve. In terms of the Bengals, though, I think it all starts on defense. Most of their money outside of T. Higgins should be spent on defense. And like I said, I think that they could use a veteran guard to help protect Burrow. But really, when it comes to the Bengals and it comes down to defeating the Chiefs, they've done a great job at game planning and playing against the Chiefs. And it's because Burrow gives them a chance at quarterback. It's because their offense is so difficult to defend with the weaponry. Their offense has always been about the players, the Jimmies and the Joes over the X's and the O's, which is why it's so hard to defend for somebody like Steve Spagnuolo, because there's only so much scheming you can do to defend Jamar Chase. Eventually, he's going to break a big play, right? So I think the Bengals are definitely a team to watch out for if they make the right decisions this offseason. In the chat, we've got Dusty who says, just break Mahomes' legs. That's all. Now, I thought the Bills were going to employ that strategy once they informed us that Kareem Jackson was going to be in the lineup, but unfortunately, they never pulled that card. I'm just kidding. Mahomes, I hope you stay healthy, bro. But can you just please lose? Like, please, just lose. Thank you. Jack says, Texans healthy will be a problem. I like this one. The Texans are definitely a team that we're going to discuss later in this video. So hold on. SG says the refs are the only thing that can end it. The refs, they if they could just give the first down when it's actually a first down on 4th and 1, that would be helpful. But unfortunately, you know, one guy spotted the ball one way, one other guy spotted the ball the other way. Unfortunately, that's just how reffing is. It's the eye test sometimes on those ball spots, bro. I don't know. What do you got? It's the home crowd, too. If that game's in Buffalo, do they give them that first down? I don't know. Maybe. Jack says Saquon running through them. I do think Saquon will give them issues. That's for sure. I think the Eagles, you know, the interesting thing about the Super Bowl matchup, obviously they didn't play this regular season, but the interesting thing to me, just to go on a side tangent here, is that the Eagles are the most talented team in the league. They have the best offensive line in the league. They have the best running back in the league. They've got 2 wide receiver ones. They've got the best defense in the league. So if anyone from a talent standpoint can beat the Chiefs, it is the Eagles. But from a quarterback difference, from a coaching difference, I think that the Chiefs definitely deserve to be favored. And I think that they probably will win. But given the fact that the Eagles do have that much talent on their side, including a wild card up their sleeve of Vic Fangio having been in that division against Mahomes for a couple of years there. That should definitely help their case of winning this Super Bowl. And if they can control the ball with Saquon, they can win. I do agree with that. Let's get to the next one, man. Let's go to the San Francisco 49ers. And I could make an argument that no team has been closer to ending this than the San Francisco 49ers. In the first Super Bowl, they were up 2 scores. In the second Super Bowl, they were winning, and the game went to overtime. And honestly, I feel like if Dre Greenlaw doesn't tear his Achilles running onto the field, or if they get a blocked extra point, they probably beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I know it's that close. The margins have been that slim for the Chiefs, but truly, the 49ers have been one of the best teams over the past 5 to 7 years under Kyle Shanahan, and they've had one of the most talented rosters and one of the best coaching staffs. Now, one of the things that I think will re-transform the Niners back into a real, legitimate Super Bowl contender is the fact that they now have their defensive coordinator and their defensive mind back in Robert Saleh. Saleh was their defensive guy in 2019 and 2020, leading that unit, right? And he returns. And the thing with the 49ers is, because they've been so successful, they've had such a brain drain, because anybody connected to Kyle Shanahan has gotten a job, like anybody, legitimately. Mike McDaniel, Kubiak, you go down the list, Slowick, D'Amico Ryans, Robert Saleh. They have all been stripped of their coaching staff, right? So getting a mind like Saleh back on the defensive side will help relieve Kyle Shanahan of some tension and allow him to focus all of his focus onto the offensive side of the ball, especially because Saleh has been a head coach now. So he actually realizes what it takes to run an entire team. So that should be very helpful, right? Like Spagnuolo and Reed are so dynamic because Spags used to be a head coach and he's so good on his side of the ball. But Shanahan has been missing that element the last 2 seasons, including the season they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And that might have been the difference of not having that great defensive mind or great defensive coordinator to help him out in that Super Bowl run, right? So when we look at the team, though, Brock Purdy has definitely been somebody that's been successful. He showed his flaws this year to a certain degree, but I think a lot of that came down to the support staff that was around him. If the Niners are able to get back all of their offensive pieces this year, including CMC, right? Arguably the most talented all-around running back in football, right? He's going to be right there with Saquon entering next year. He's just a game changer for them. He's an MVP type player for them, the way that he can catch the football, the way he can pass block, the amount of snaps he takes, the explosion he brings to the offense. He's so dynamic in a number of ways. He gives them another receiver and a runner on their offense. And that combined with Debo, who will be motivated entering next year, and I thought actually finished this past season fairly well. Those 2 guys back on the field, will be pretty interesting together. And then you've got George Kittle coming off another amazing season, what he does in the pass and the run game. Then you've got the evolution of Ricky Pearsall, who finished the season very well, including a primetime game against the Lions where he went off. Hopefully, he has a little bit of a healthier offseason, if you know what I'm saying. And entering next year, he actually has a full training camp, a full offseason. He gets to learn the entire offense. He could be a dynamic force. And Brandon Ayuk will also return at some point next year. So Purdy having all his weaponry, that could make them arguably the most dynamic offense in football because Kyle's calling the plays and they've got some of the best weaponry across the board. If you could help in terms of the protection up front, that was perhaps the Niners' biggest flaw against the Chiefs in the past 2 Super Bowls. The inability to, at crucial moments, block Chris Jones or to block the blitz of Spags. If you can protect Purdy, you can beat the Chiefs, right? So protect him up front. That would include upgrading your center position. Some names out there like Ryan Kelly of the Colts. Did the Niners try to swing on a center this offseason? Because their center in Brendel this year was the worst in the league, in my opinion. He was terrible. Okay, like absolutely atrocious. And the Niners center is essential because he is so important in both the run and the pass game and protection calls. So Ryan Kelly of the Colts, maybe somebody similar in the system, the mold of Josh Myers from the Packers. Drew Dahlman was very good this year. Those are some names in free agency. There aren't a lot. Maybe they go to the draft for that position, but I'm just bringing some names up in free agency. Left guard Aaron Banks is a free agent, but there are plenty of other names including a chief that they could sign at the guard position. A guy that I would like for them would be James Daniels if they wanted to go a veteran route, or maybe Tevin Jenkins of the Bears. Those two names if they wanted to pivot from Aaron Banks, but Banks has been okay for them at left guard. Right tackle is another position that I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted like early in the draft, because McKivitz has been okay, but I think they could definitely be a little bit better at that position. Defensively, they're overall solid with Saleh coming back. That was my biggest concern. Hargrave, it looks like he'll be a cap casualty. It would be nice if they re-sign Hufanga in the secondary. I thought their secondary was actually very solid this year. Jarvarius Ward is a free agent, but they have Lenore, who's very underrated. They have Green, who had a very promising rookie season. Mustafa had a very promising rookie season. So if you could put Hufanga healthy alongside Mustafa and Brown at safety, that's a pretty good trio. You've got a defensive front. Looks like Leonard Floyd will stick around. I liked how Malik Collins played this year, but if they could bring a defensive tackle in, whether it be through the draft or free agency, maybe they bring back a DJ Jones to help them against the run. That would be pretty big. Or maybe they bring in another edge rusher to help them in pass rush situations. Those are the type of players I'm looking for. You know, like Dante Fowler could be a name on third down that they go after, somebody like that. No, not anything crazy, I would think, but just some additional names, because they already have a lot of talent. I think Adigi Zua of the Cowboys fits their system very well as well. Possible Jets like DJ Reed could also come to this team. You know, the guys that are influenced by Saleh being in San Francisco. Those are all possibilities. Their special teams was also low-key a huge flaw for this team. Get rid of Moody, please. He's awful. And they did get a new special teams coordinator, which should help significantly. So the Niners, with Purdy, Kyle, the dynamic weaponry, the offensive scheme, the defense of Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, those foundational pieces, they'll be in the mix next year to win the NFC, and they might have a puncher's chance once again against the Chiefs. If they can just improve a little bit up front on the O-line, a little bit defensively, those will be things that definitely get them pointed in the right direction. That team was incredibly unlucky last season. Mahomes is going to keep winning until some of the teams are smart enough to stack their offense and get a decent defense, the Bengals or the Bills, says Karl Malone. The thing is, like, time will eventually catch up to the Chiefs. Like, even if they win this game in the Super Bowl, like, the chances they win a fourth Super Bowl in a row, it's just like incredibly unlikely. Like, some team is eventually going to beat them, whether it be because the Chiefs are regressing, getting older, like whether it's because they just lose because they're injured. Like, those things can all happen, right? That's how some great teams just fall eventually, or they have a down year, or the wear and tear of being to 3 Super Bowls in a row eventually wears on them. Like, these things eventually happen and you just lose, or you get a little unlucky in a game and the ball bounces the wrong way. Like, seemingly the last 2 playoffs, the Chiefs have had the ball bounce their way just a little enough to win those games, right? The easiest move is to just start evaluating refs. Guys, you love the refs. Start evaluating refs the way they do in MLB. Yeah, we'll have to see what the refs do in the Super Bowl. I haven't seen the Chiefs get called for holding in the Super Bowl in quite some time, so we'll see if that happens. All right, let's get to the next team, the team that just recently lost the Chiefs. And I know Bills Mafia doesn't want to hear this, man. I know Bills Mafia doesn't want to hear. Mitch, don't even tell me. They're probably not even here. They're probably still crying. It's okay. I understand. But the Bills are a team that certainly still have a chance to beat the Chiefs moving forward. And honestly, when you look at it from this positive perspective, the Buffalo Bills were thought of as a rebuilding team this year. They were thought of as a team that was in transition. A lot of people, like in premier spots talking football, were saying the Bills were going to be worse than the Jets. They were going to be worse than the Dolphins, okay, in their own division. And Buffalo ended up being, the second best team in the AFC this year, right? So right there, it's self-explanatory. They could obviously get better. And when you look at the Bills this offseason, there's not a lot of things that they're losing necessarily, which is a great start. Like their foundation of having Joe Brady still there as the offensive coordinator, having Josh Allen, having a lot of the young offensive pieces in their prime, right? James Cook, Keon Coleman in year 2, Dalton Kincaid with another year. I believe Curtis Samuel will be returning. Khalil Shakir in his prime. The O-line is still intact. There's not a lot of things offensively they really have to worry about, which is a great start. Okay, they don't really have to worry about signing many pieces. Like Amari Cooper is a free agent. They traded for him. But other than that, it's like Mac Hollins is a free agent. He's a role player, played great against the Chiefs this past game. They probably want to have him back. He probably wants to come back, right? But it's nothing too drastic offensively. What if they could go out and make a dynamic trade for a receiver, whether it be, or even a draft pick? Maybe they go out and they pick another receiver to play on the outside. Maybe Keon Coleman takes a step in year 2, but maybe they make a trade. Maybe they go after somebody. There's plenty of receivers that could be dealt. So we'll see. But getting a legitimate wide receiver 1 like they used to have in Stephon Diggs, that would take this offense completely over the top. That would make them nearly unstoppable, right? If they had somebody like some of these names that are out on the trade market potentially, like DK Metcalf or like AJ Brown or like Tyreek Hill or like these guys that people are floating around. Or if they were able to go out and get T. Higgins and bring him to Buffalo, how would that change their offense? Because their offense is already so good in the run game. Josh elevates a lot of the players around him. So if they're able to make that move, that would be huge. Now, I really think they need to focus 90% of their attention defensively. I think the real reason they lost to the Chiefs beyond the coaching mismatch, in my opinion, is the defense. I think they need to address the defensive playmakers. I think they need to add a defensive playmaker in the secondary specifically. Safety would be the position I'd be looking at the most. Their defensive line is solid. They could use another pass rusher. They could use a big run defender. Those are things that they could certainly use. They're fine at linebacker. I like Milano. I like Bernard. Those guys are good players. But in terms of you could always use another pass rusher for sure. Maybe they address that in the draft. There are names out there like veterans, like maybe you get a Hassan Reddick to help you on a pass rushing situation, or maybe you bring in a D tackle like Milton Williams, or maybe you bring in a veteran like DeMarcus Lawrence or something like that. They could do that sort of thing, but I think safety would be more critical for them to improve because safety was really poor for them this year. Bishop showed flashes as a rookie. Rapp is solid, but I don't think really Hamlin is great, honestly. I think they could improve that position. The Chiefs' Justin Reed is out there. There's veterans like Simmons and Matthew that they could add. I really like Javon Holland. If they could get Javon Holland, that would be a game changer. He's a dynamic player. Great range. He would change the speed of their defense. Hufanga would change the anger of their defense, the physicality of their defense. And quite frankly, I think they need physicality in their defense if you watch them try to tackle Patrick Mahomes. Blackman from the Colts is a solid safety. Those are all names that I think they could go after. Maybe they even look to the draft for that position as well. But this is actually a team that corner Rasul Douglas is a free agent. I don't think that would be a huge loss. They could definitely go after somebody at corner to replace him for sure. I don't think Khair Elam is the answer. That's for sure after watching him. Christian Benford getting hurt in that game was so big because he is a number 1 corner in this league. The last thing that's the biggest is, do you move on from Sean McDermott? Is it time for a change at head coach? Is it time? And my thing is I feel like, unfortunately, they're a little bit too far gone in the coaching search. I don't think there's enough options out there unless you somehow talked Bill Belichick out of coaching North Carolina and coming to Buffalo and being the Buffalo Bills truly. Then maybe you could do that. But I don't think that's going to happen. Where are you really getting this upgrade from Sean McDermott is my question. Would you go after another established guy like Mike McCarthy is still out there? Or do you go after somebody a little bit younger with a different approach? Do you go after somebody like Cliff Kingsbury? I don't know if you would want to do that because I think you would want still to have that established guy that can run a team, at a high level. Would Brian Flores be a difference maker? Maybe you even try to steal Spags from the Chiefs and just even the playing field and say, hey, go get a defensive coordinator, try to replace Spags. And we got Joe Brady on offense. We got Spags on defense. We're going to make this work. What if the Bills went that approach? We got rid of McDermott for Spags. That would be pretty crazy. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But I do feel like eventually you hit the wall so many times, you get out-coached so many times by the Chiefs that you need to make a change. And that's why I say, is it McDermott's time to go? I think you have to be critical about that, as good as he's been for this team. The chat, Niners couldn't beat the Chiefs' second strings. What are you talking about? What do you mean by that, second strings? Billy, don't be dramatic, bro. DK to the Ravens. Potentially. We're going to talk about the Ravens here in a second. Chiefs Hawk says, hope and pray Andy Reid and Travis Kelce retire. That's definitely a factor. I don't know if Andy Reid is going to retire anytime soon, but Travis Kelce could definitely retire. But that being said, I mean, Kelce didn't do a ton against the Bills. I mean, he really wasn't the biggest factor why they beat the Bills. I really feel like it was more so to do with the coaching and the lack of defense on the Bills side against some of those receivers. Now, the Ravens are next up. And I thought the Ravens, honestly, like going through all of these teams, I felt like the Ravens have the least amount to achieve in order to beat the Chiefs. Because I honestly think, like, if you look at a lot of the metrics this year, like the Ravens were the number one team in DVOA, the number one offense in EPA. Like, by the end of the year, their defense was playing exceptional football. And they kind of somewhat beat themselves against Buffalo. And really, that's why I say, like, the number one thing the Ravens have to do is they have to learn how to play playoff football. And that really comes down to Lamar clutching up and playing better. And he did play better against Buffalo after, in my opinion, the fumble. The fumble was bad. The interception was not helpful. But for the most part, he actually played a solid game, especially in the second half against Buffalo. But Harbaugh, you know, they took a lot of penalties this year. Harbaugh and Lamar is also something that you have to examine, just like McDermott and Allen, where it's like, is it just time to make a different move, to make a shift, to change it up? But for the Ravens, they do get their defensive coordinator going into year 2. He was a rookie this year. That was big, right? Losing Mike McDonald might have been the reason they didn't win the Super Bowl this year, to be honest with you. The Todd Monken being there still and probably not being hired as a head coach is a huge factor, keeping that continuity with Lamar being back-to-back MVP most likely. But Lamar just learning how to play a little bit better in the playoffs, mistake-free in the playoffs. Derrick Henry was obviously a game changer for them this season. He should still be great next year, you would think. The O-line does have to be addressed or replaced, whether it be Ronnie Stanley at left tackle or Macari at left guard. I think Macari is obviously the lesser of the two names. Stanley's an awesome left tackle. He's had injury issues in the past that might allow them to retain him, but they definitely need to address that position, whether that's re-signing Stanley, drafting a left tackle early in the first round or something like that, or maybe even getting another veteran to come in. Lamar does allow you, though, to get away with lesser protection because he's so dynamic at making people miss and avoiding, and a lot of teams don't like to rush Lamar the way that they rush other quarterbacks because he's so dynamic getting outside the pocket that you want to contain him inside that pocket. So actually having a great left tackle is not as essential as it would be for other quarterbacks in the league. But I will say that addressing those positions is pretty important. But mostly with the Ravens, it's like, can you find the small little contributors that can put you over the top? Like, can you upgrade that third cornerback position from Brandon Stevens, who's a free agent, and find a different guy? Like last year, they had Ronald Darby. He was so much better, in my opinion, in that role than Brandon Stevens. I love that Wiggins draft pick. I think Wiggins is a real baller for them. I think in year 2, he's going to break out. Can they replace Marcus Williams, who was hurt this year at safety? Because I think they could improve that position for sure. Could they add another edge rusher alongside Kyle Van Noy and Oweh to come in on passing snaps and passing downs and get after the quarterback, similarly to how they had Jadeveon Clowney? I think just the subtle losses the Ravens had from last year to this year, which is why last year probably was their best chance of winning a Super Bowl, right? Like last year, meaning the year they lost the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, and they kind of screwed themselves by not running the ball and fumbling the ball at the goal line. But when you're talking about the Ravens, like, can they get that replacement that they never found for Patrick Queen? Can their defensive coordinator elevate like Mike McDonald did? Can they have that corner? Like, those are small positions that they didn't have this year. The edge rusher that they had in Jadeveon Clowney that they didn't have this year. Like, their defense was just a little bit worse, which made all the difference. Their defense was awesome in 2023, 2024, right? It was like one of the best we've seen in recent years. So getting back to that level will just take those small improvements. Offensively, I think they're much better than they were then because Zay Flowers has really developed, who didn't play against the Bills. If they could find another receiver, right? Instead of Nelson Aguilar as your 3, could you add somebody like Brandon Cooks? Like, no, not even like a big name but like a veteran that's still capable, like a good player that can add a little bit of something to your offense? Could you add somebody like Darius Slayton or somebody like De'Ami Brown, or like those guys are free agents, right? For the linebacker position, a Willie Gay is out there, a former Chief. Maybe that's somebody that could complement Roquan Smith at that position. Could you bring in Matt Judon, return for Matt Judon as that third edge rusher, a veteran that comes off the bench and pass snaps, not an every down player, but somebody that could get after the quarterback. Like just guys like that. I don't think the Ravens have to go over the top and go crazy and go, but I do think those are some small positions that they could definitely improve. Maddie says AFC defenses needs to get faster to take away Kansas City. Now, the interesting thing, Maddie, will be what the Chiefs do this offseason. I do think that the Chiefs run game, like the Chiefs are going to be interesting from an O-line perspective because Trey Smith is a free agent. Their left tackle position is kind of like iffy, and then their running back, like Pacheco, maybe improves into next year because he'll be healthier maybe, but Kareem Hunt has been the better player and Kareem Hunt is past his prime, right? And then Travis Kelce is only getting older. He's not exactly fast. Marquise Brown is a free agent, but they bring back Rashee Rice and they have Worthy, and those will be their two receivers, right, that you really think about. They'll have Rashee Rice and Worthy, and Hopkins is a free agent. He probably won't be there. So, I don't know if speed is necessarily the thing. I think that might specifically be it for the Bills. The Bills are a little slow in the secondary. I definitely would agree with that, especially at safety, which is where I think they really fail. But I don't know if Baltimore is too slow. It just so happens that there's certain teams that have to play them maybe Cincinnati. They're just bad on defense in general, right? But I definitely think speed is kind of a case-by-case situation there. Cheetah to the Ravens. That would be crazy. I don't know how that, I don't know. And maybe they go that direction, but maybe they go that direction. I would love to see it. Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and Derrick Henry. That would be insane football, but I don't know. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to achieve that, but we'll see. I don't even think they need that. Even if they could bring in, like I said, just a subtle improvement to that third receiver. That's been something that has really hurt them, right? Rashad Bateman really got better this year. He played good football this year, but somebody that's better than Nelson Aguilar, that would be nice, right? That's what they were aiming to do with Deontay Johnson. They weren't able to achieve that. So we'll see if they're able to do that and just upgrade their defense just a little bit. Okay, let's get to the next one. The Houston Texans. The Texans are really intriguing to me going into 2025 because it's time to take that next step. The Houston Texans are a post-hype sleeper, as you would call it. This year was expected to be their year, but with so much regression from the offensive side, whether it be the play calling from Bobby Slowick, the quarterback play from CJ Stroud, or especially the offensive line and protection, they just didn't achieve what we expected them to achieve at the peak level of their powers, right? We thought that they could really be the team in the AFC. I did, at least, especially that defense. And the defense by the end of the year, look at what they did against the Chiefs. They were very good in that game. Look at what they did against the Chargers. They dominated, right? The Texans defense, arguably a top 2 defense in the league by the end of the season. They were really that good. And they even had injuries at safety and things like that, right? But if that offense can complement that defense into next year, now we're talking, right? And you look at the Texans defensively, you've got the edge rushers, Hunter's still playing well, and Anderson is an animal. The D-line is still definitely going to be really good. The linebacker position is fast and physical. They've got 2 awesome young corners, Stingley and Lassiter. Can they find a nickel corner? Can they find some safeties? Jimmy Ward's getting old and always injured. They should move on from him. But the rookie didn't play bad. I believe it's Bullock. He was okay, but I think they can add another safety there. There's plenty of free agents out there. Maybe, who are some safety names that I brought up? But maybe Holland's too expensive or something like that. But they could use somebody. Maybe they steal Hufanga from the 49ers. He knows the system. Somebody like that, or potentially maybe they bring in a veteran. Maybe they bring in Justin Reed back to Houston or Justin Simmons, something like that. But They could definitely use a complement at safety and then a nickel corner for sure. Like if you could upgrade that nickel corner spot and you've got 3 really good corners that you can count on, that would change your defense entirely. That would allow you to play more man coverage with Lassiter and Stingley. You could have Stingley covering the number ones. You know, that type of corner trio would just change the game, because if you're able to play man coverage at a high level, that just changes how you're able to play the run, how you're able to be aggressive in blitz, how you're able to get after teams. The safety position is important because, especially against the Chiefs, because you have to cover Travis Kelce. You have to cover that guy. And I didn't really feel like the Texans had that piece, which is why Travis Kelce ripped them up. When they went to a lot of zone, he was open in the middle of the zone, vacated zone. They need a guy that they can lock up Travis Kelce with, that they can stick on him and they can limit Travis Kelce. So can they find that piece to be able to do that this offseason? That would be big defensively. But defensively, like I said, was not really the problem. More comes down to offense. Offensive coordinator hire is going to be big. Who do they go after there? We've been hearing some rumors about Chip Kelly. That would be pretty interesting. But they've kind of missed out on a lot of the offensive coordinator hires already because they kind of fired Bobby Slowick a little late. I will say that Bobby Slowick, I wouldn't say deserved to get fired necessarily, but I do feel like he had a huge letdown this year. And with the pieces he was given, he did not make enough magic happen. So I definitely feel like the improvement can come this year from the offensive scheme. Offensive line help will be on the way. I know that Nick Caserio will make those moves. Maybe they steal Trey Smith from Kansas City. Maybe they go after veterans like Zeitler. Maybe they go after a great promising season from Mekhi Becton of the Eagles. He's a free agent. Some of these guys could really help them both in the run and the pass game, especially at the guard position. Their left guard specifically was awful this year. Their center position, they've got some prospects there that have improved, but that's another area. Right guard Shaq Mason's getting a little bit old. Right tackle could also be something that they look at. But offensive line in general, all positions that they need to look at outside of really left tackle. They need to examine that and see where they can improve. The draft, free agency, possible solutions will be out there. Wide receiver dilemma. Stephon Diggs, is he going to come back? Is he not? He was playing really well for this team. He was a perfect fit for them. Tank Dell was playing great by the end of the year, but he got injured. Okay, so Tank Dell will be on the team. Nico Collins is on the team, but like, is Stephon Diggs going to be that guy that returns? Are they going to go after somebody different at wide receiver than Stephon Diggs? Maybe like another veteran like Amari Cooper or Chris Godwin or Keenan Allen? Will they go after that? If they want like a slot type like Diggs was sort of playing, like would they go after somebody different like Keenan Allen instead of the injured Stephon Diggs? Maybe, possibly. I mean, that could be a different take there. But other than that, bad habits definitely caught up to them. Poor offensive line play caught up to them. I expect elevation from CJ Stroud in 2025. And like I said, if they can figure out how to block, you give CJ Stroud a little time. You give Joe Mixon some more holes to run through. You got a dynamic defense already. That's enough for them to potentially beat the Chiefs. I really think so. They've got a great defensive-minded coach in DeMeco Ryans, one of the best there is. And they showcased a game plan that could work. It's just that they have too many flaws right now. They need to fix those flaws, which were so apparent this entire season. Getting to the comments, Life says Raiders got to trade up and get a franchise quarterback to have a chance to beat the Chiefs. Yeah, the Raiders are a far ways away, bro. I will say if anyone knows how to beat the Chiefs, it's Tom Brady. I will say that. But they need a couple seasons to get to the Chiefs level for sure. They need a quarterback. That it all begins with a quarterback. Every team on this list has some way, shape, or form a quarterback that can at least go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in some way, shape, or form, and have proven that in some way, shape, or form. And in terms of Stroud, I do believe that he's somebody that post-hype sleeper, great rookie season, sophomore slump. Next year, he'll probably be back in fine form, especially if they find protection for him. Jay Meals, I think. If the Chargers address wide receiver, interior offensive line, and a few small tweaks, they might be a problem. Last 2 games were decided by 1 score. That's a great transition, sir, because our final team on this list will be the Chargers. It's time to bolt up, baby, and help out Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert needs a little help if you want to beat the Chiefs. And I think getting a wide receiver 1, specifically a perimeter wide receiver one would change the game for this offense. I think a big reason that they failed to beat the Chiefs and failed to beat the Texans this year is the lack of separation and ability to make plays outside of Ladd McConkey. If you look at the Texans game in the playoffs, I mean, Ladd McConkey had nearly 200 yards. Everyone else did nothing, right? Nobody was getting open. Nobody was making plays. Quentin Johnston showed flashes, but to me, he looks more like a number 3 in the NFL. Same thing for Josh Palmer. That's always been the case, right? DJ Chark was not much of a help, but get some wide receiver help, get a big-time wide receiver, whether it be more likely an outside threat. So bringing back Keenan Allen or signing Chris Godwin, I don't think would be the right moves to make personally, just because Ladd McConkey is already like legitimately a very good slot receiver. So getting somebody on the outside, could it be T. Higgins? Could they trade for somebody like Tyreek Hill has been floated around? That type of impactful player that can stretch the field or make plays vertically for Justin Herbert, like Mike Williams used to. Maybe they even bring back Mike Williams in a lesser role just to have that chemistry. That would also be impactful as well. He's a free agent. So guys like that, adding perimeter threat at wide receiver, installing an interior offensive line. I agree with you, right? They've got the tackles for sure, but interior was a problem. Center, Bozeman, he's kind of a replaceable asset. They could improve at that position. Both guard positions could be improved potentially. The draft will definitely be a place that I think they look for that primarily. But there are veteran help out there, like we've already talked about it. And I wouldn't even be shocked if the Chargers were the team that spent a lot of money on offensive line, like stealing Trey Smith from the Chiefs, because he's legitimately one of the 10 best guards in the league. And that seems to be Harbaugh's forte, is getting offensive linemen. And getting protection for Herbert would be huge, especially the style of quarterback that he is. Complementing J.K. Dobbins, I think, is also a big thing. Gus Edwards wasn't a great backup. We saw when Dobbins was out that they didn't really have a good replacement for him. So a guy, maybe even that's a good pass catcher on third down, a guy that can convert, be a good pass blocker, that can run routes. Because Herbert's that type of quarterback where he likes to throw those mismatches. He likes to throw to the running back quite a bit out of the flat and things like that. Get that quick completion. Get a running back like Eckler was for him early in his career. Like that type of chain mover, or just a change of pace for J.K. Dobbins as well. I think they should re-sign J.K. Dobbins to be their primary early down back. When looking at the defense, I loved how they were coached. I feel like their coaching was very solid under Minter. But they could use some more talent on the interior defensive line, a disruptor on that front. I think they'll probably let Khalil Mack go because their rookie actually led the team in sacks, so I wouldn't be too concerned with that. Linebacker beside Henley could also use a little bit of improvement potentially. Another corner. There are a couple free agents in their secondary. I love their safeties. I love their 2 young corners, but having a third corner is always important. They could look young that direction as well, or maybe more of an established veteran as well. But, we'll see. I feel like the Chargers honestly are not too far off, just because, just like the Texans, their flaws were so apparent. Like it was clear they needed a receiver who could catch and could separate. It was clear that their interior O-line was much weaker than their tackles. It was clear that maybe they were better in terms of their scheme than their talent defensively, but their scheme is a great start, and they still got enough talent, right? Like, you've still got Joey Bosa on the roster. You've still got Derwin James, who played amazing this year. Your 2 young corners are really promising. You've got a good enough pass rush. You've got Henley at linebacker. There's enough foundation there that you just got to build around on defense, and all those players will be back. Denver is a team that I almost put on this list. I feel like Denver can cause trouble as well. Yes, I think keeping Vance Joseph is a huge factor. Vance Joseph is a good defensive coordinator, keeping that intact. And I love how Denver has a lot of key pieces. I think they could improve their linebacker position for sure. I think that safety could also maybe use a little bit of improvement. But corner, they're pretty darn good. I mean, there's not many teams that are better at corner than the Broncos. They've got Nick Bonito. They've got Zach Allen. DJ Jones will be a free agent, which kind of hurts. But John Franklin Myers was a good addition. Their defense is good. Like, they're a top 5 defense. Their offense, Bo Nix will be interesting because can he take that next step? It's going to be hard because he was thought of as a high floor quarterback coming into the NFL, but he showed a great ability to protect the ball, to run, to scramble, to make big time throws down the field. I think another legitimate weapon would be big for them. A real legitimate running back would be big for them. Those are 2 things I would look at. Maybe a tight end as well. a tight end, a wide receiver one, a running back. Those are all playmakers that Sean Payton could utilize in the offense. And then defensively, safety, linebacker, those are positions as well. Turn says you can simply not beat the Chiefs, period. Unfortunately, Tom Brady's retired, unfortunately. So, yeah, doesn't feel like it right now, but somebody eventually will beat the Chiefs. But will these teams make the changes necessary to beat the Chiefs is the question, right? I've laid it out for you guys. I've laid it out at every single team. It's not that easy to achieve. Even if they go about this checklist and they check every single thing off, maybe they hit on one position and they missed on the other. Maybe they hit on one signing, maybe they missed on the next one, right? So that's how the NFL is. But I definitely feel like all these teams on this list have the ingredients at a floor-based level, quarterback, coaching, whatever it may be, maybe defense, maybe offense, that are necessary to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs also have to deal with their free agents, their guys that they may lose, their guys that might retire, their guys or whatever that might regress. Like, they're going to have to deal with all that sort of stuff too. Four-peat would be next to impossible, but given this Chiefs team, I didn't think a three-peat was possible, especially how they've played throughout the course of the year leading up to these playoffs. But they're in the Super Bowl. Can the Eagles knock them off first? If the Eagles don't knock them off, I hope it's one of these teams on the list, because they watched this live stream and they said, Mitch, you're right. This is what we're going to do. So that's the show, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in, leaving the comments. Thank you so much. We will be back tomorrow. All right. So make sure to tune into the show tomorrow, NFL Daily on Bleacher Report. It is 7 p.m. Eastern every single day, including tomorrow with me. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.